Hey everyone, and welcome back to our JavaScript beginner series. In this episode, we're diving into the document object model, or the DOM. And if you've ever wondered how JavaScript interacts with web pages, this is where the magic happens. And by the end of this episode, you'll know how to select and modify elements on a web page. So let's get started. First of all, what is the document object model? It is the data representation of the objects that comprise the structure and content of a document on the web. It is a way to represent a web page in the structured hierarchical way, as you can see right here. And it can be thought of as a tree of different HTML elements, its properties, and its methods and events. So in order to demonstrate the document object model, I'm going to execute two commands in the browser's DevTools. And those two commands are going to be console.log document, which is an object which represents the entire structure of this web page right here, and which is loaded onto the browser. So this shows us the DOM structure of the web page, which is useful for understanding how the HTML is organized. So as you can see, here is the head and how the elements inside the head are organized, and this is the body, and it also contains the script and the styling. So another command which is used to demonstrate the document object model is console.log or console.dir document, and this shows the properties and methods of the document object, which is useful for understanding what you can do with the DOM with your program. So JavaScript can access and modify this structure dynamically, and now that we have an idea of what the DOM is, we will move on to DOM manipulation, which starts with selecting the elements of the DOM. And to do that, I'm going to be using VS Code and open our files that we created in previous episodes, that is index.html and script.js. So first, let's create some elements in our HTML body. So let's say I create a header or a heading element and give it an ID called main heading, and I type out this is the main heading, and then I create another element which is a paragraph. This is a paragraph. And to show you that we can select multiple elements at once, I am going to create an unordered list which has two list items having class list item. So let's say our list item is chocolate at first, and then our list item is milk. So chocolate and milk. Now let's select these elements using our JavaScript. One of the ways we can select an element in JavaScript is by its ID, and we can create a variable to store the selected element. So let's say let heading equals the document object dot, now we use the selector that is getElementById, and we enter its ID name in double quotations, that is main heading. And after this element is selected, we can do whatever we want with it. So let's log our heading onto the console. So console.log heading, and I'll save this, launch the live server again. So we see that our elements have been updated, and we can see that the element that is our heading selected by its ID is logged on to the console with the help of this selector right here, document.getElementById. Now we can select elements by class name as well. So let's say let items equals document.getElements by class name. So it's already recommended, so I'll click enter, and our class name was list item. And if we log these selected items, so items, we can see that an HTML collection is logged on to the console. which is not an array but an HTML collection. So we can select elements by the class name and the ID name as well. And we can also select elements by its tag name. So suppose let paragraphs equals document dot get elements by tag name. So we have a p tag, so let's select the p tag and log that on to our console. So paragraphs, and we can see that our p tag is logged on to the console as well. And if we want to select specific items, we have to use indexing. So if I want to select milk, I'll have to use the indexing 1 for it. So if I put an index after selecting the items by class name and put an indexing called 1, it should select the value at the first index, that is 0th and first index, so it should select milk. So if we head on to our browser, we can see that a single list item has been selected, and if we go down to check its text content properties, we can see that milk, that is this element, has been selected. So in order to select a single element by using its class name, we have to use indexing. And same with the paragraph tags, since these also return an HTML collection. If there are multiple paragraph tags, you can select a specific paragraph by its indexing. But if you want to select a specific paragraph, using getElementById is more convenient, since you don't have to worry about mentioning its indexing. So now another method of selecting elements of the DOM using JavaScript is by using the querySelector and querySelector all. And these selectors use the CSS selectors to select items from the DOM. So let me show you what I am talking about. So if I type out let heading equals document dot querySelector, and if I want to select the heading and I want to select it by ID, I have to give the hashtag and then I have to write its ID. So main heading, and if I use console.log to log on this selected item, we will get this result in the browser. So we can see that the heading having the main heading ID is selected by using the querySelector. So if I want to select the items or a single item using the querySelector, because querySelector is for single items, and I want to select an item by class name, I can use the dot selector. So dot list item, if I type this out, item. If I sort this out, we can see a single list item has been selected and it has the text content of chocolate. So the first item that matches the class name is logged on to the console or is selected by our querySelector. Now if I use querySelector all for suppose let all items, it will return all of the items or all of the elements that match the class name. So all items equals document dot querySelector all, and I type out the class name using dot list item and log our selected items onto the console. So all items, it provides us a node list with all of the items that we just selected with the querySelector. So these are considered the modern approaches to selecting items in JavaScript because it provides a simpler, more flexible and more powerful method to compare to our older DOM selection methods like the ones we just discussed: document.getElementById, .getElementsByTagName, and .getElementsByClassName. And using the methods querySelector and querySelector all allow you to use CSS selectors directly, which makes it more versatile. And since instead of using multiple different methods like the ones I just mentioned, we can use one unified method. So that is why these are considered as optimal and the modern approach. So now that we know about the ways of selecting an element, let's change its text content. JavaScript allows us to update the text inside an element using the method called innerText. So if I want to change the text of the heading, we have to select it first. So I'm going to select it using document.getElementById. So our ID is main heading. And now that I've selected the heading, I'm going to change its text using a method called innerText. innerText equals hello JavaScript. I have been changed. So let's see if the text content has changed after saving this file right here and opening our browser. So we can see that the text content of the heading is changed. Next, we can move on to modifying an element's attributes, and for that we can use the setAttribute and the getAttribute methods. The setAttribute method is to change or add attributes to an element, and the getAttribute method is to retrieve their values, and I'm going to demonstrate it right now. So if I type heading dot setAttribute, and in the bracket at first we have to write what attribute we want to change or add. That is, I'm going to add style and then the value. So color is red, and let's say the font weight is bold. So let's see if some changes have took place after we save and go on to our browser and then JavaScript. So we can see that its attribute has been changed, and it has been changed to red and then bold. So if we use the getAttribute property, console.log heading.getAttribute, and if we type out the name of the attribute, style, we can see in our browser that the attribute that we had just set has been logged onto the console. And this is how setAttribute can be used to change and add attributes of items after they are selected. And instead of using the setAttribute, we can also directly modify the styles with the .style property, and I'll show you how that can be done. So if I comment this out and write heading.style and write our style value, and write our style property color equals, and then our value blue, and if we write out heading.style.background color equals light gray, and then we save this and head on to our browser, we can see that these changes have been applied by using the .style property. And notice how while using the .style property, instead of using the usual CSS syntax as in with hyphens, we use camel casing. So that is the difference between applying CSS externally with a CSS file and using JavaScript to apply CSS. It's the casing. And that's a wrap for this episode. In the next session, we'll explore how to create and remove elements dynamically and even handle user interactions with event listeners. So stay tuned and happy coding. If you liked the video, you can drop a like and hit that subscribe button, and check out coding.com for awesome courses. So we'll see you guys in the next one.